My name is Rachel Simmons. I am 39 years old, and I want to tell you about 7 days during which my son did not say a single unnecessary word to me, answered my questions with the minimum number of syllables required, looked at me with the particular careful neutrality of someone who has decided to manage their feelings in private, and left me standing in my own kitchen every evening, wondering what I had done and whether I fully understood the size of it. His name is Noah. He is 8 years old. He has red hair, the real kind, copper bright, the kind that catches light across a room, and brown eyes, which is an unusual combination that strangers comment on regularly in a way that used to embarrass him, and now he has learned to accept with a slight shrug. He is funny in the way that some children are funny, not performing it, not working the room, but saying the exact true thing at the exact right moment in a way that catches adults off guard. His second grade teacher told me at our first conference, Noah sees things. He notices what's actually happening in a room, not just what's supposed to be happening. She meant it as a compliment about his emotional intelligence. I have thought about that phrase many times in the months since. He sees what's actually happening. I should have remembered that more carefully in October. The week of silence began on a Monday. I know the exact moment it started because I know the exact moment that caused it. And I have replayed that moment more times than I can count in the months since, turning it over and looking at all its angles the way you examine something you dropped and are trying to understand how it broke. It was a Sunday evening. Noah had a school project due the following Friday, a poster about an animal of his choice, which he had chosen to make about red foxes, because Noah has been devoted to red foxes since he was 5 years old and encountered one in a nature documentary and announced to the family that foxes were the most intelligent and most misunderstood animals on the planet, and that he intended to learn everything about them. In the years since, he has made good on this. He knows more about fox behavior than most adults know about any animal, and he speaks about it with the comfortable authority of genuine expertise. He had been working on the poster all week. He had done research, made notes, planned the layout with the careful spatial logic he brings to building things. On Sunday evening, he spread everything out on the kitchen table and began assembling it. I was tired. I want to say that first, not as an excuse, but as a context, because I think it matters for understanding what happened. I had had a long week, a difficult week at work, a difficult week at home, a week in which I had not slept adequately and had been carrying a low-grade emotional weight that had not fully resolved. I was tired in the specific way that makes you less patient than you want to be, and more reactive than you intend to be, the way that makes the edges of things harder than they need to be. Noah was working at the table, and I was cleaning the kitchen, and at some point I looked at what he was doing, and I saw that his layout was different from what I had suggested earlier in the week. I had suggested, gently, I thought, helpfully, that he put the title at the top in large letters and organized the facts in a particular way. He had listened and nodded, and apparently gone entirely his own direction. Which is fine. I know that. I know that now, and I knew it then. But I was tired, and I said something I should not have said. Not cruel, nothing shouted, nothing designed to harm. Just a tired, impatient comment about how I had explained a better way to do it, and it would have looked more organized. And now the title was small, and the whole thing looked a bit cluttered. And why hadn't he just listened when I told him the first time? He looked at me. He didn't say anything. He looked at the poster, and then at me. And then he began quietly gathering his materials together and putting them back in his folder. I'm going to finish it in my room, he said. Very even, very controlled. I said fine. I was still tired and still a little impatient, and I said fine, and turned back to the dishes. He went to his room. And in the morning, the silence had started. It was not dramatic. That is what I want you to understand about the particular quality of Noah's silence. It was not a tantrum, not a performance, not the pointed loudness that children sometimes use to signal their feelings across a room. It was quiet. It was controlled. It was the silence of someone who has decided to manage their interior weather privately, and is doing so with a thoroughness that is more unsettling than any noise. He came to breakfast. He ate. He answered my questions. He said thank you when I passed things. He said goodbye when I dropped him at school. All the minimum requirements of family life, met exactly, without any of the extra, the random observations, the sudden tangents about Fox behaviour, the commentary on whatever he was thinking about that made breakfast with Noah feel, on good days, like a small interesting conversation with someone who found the world genuinely fascinating. That was gone. I noticed immediately. Of course I noticed. By Tuesday evening I had been sitting with the absence of it for 2 days, and it sat heavily. I tried, on Tuesday, to address it directly. Noah, I said, are you upset with me? No, he said, looking at his dinner. You seem quiet. I'm fine. Are you sure? Yes. The minimum. The exact minimum, delivered without hostility, without heat, without any of the texture that would have given me something to work with. I tried a different approach on Wednesday. I sat beside him while he was reading, and just sat there, not saying anything, making myself available. He read his book. After 10 minutes, he got up and went to get a glass of water and came back and sat somewhere else. I tried on Thursday to bring up the poster directly, to apologize, which is what I should have done on Sunday and hadn't, because on Sunday I had still been carrying enough tiredness that I had talked myself out of it, had told myself it wasn't that serious, that he would let it go. He had not let it go. Noah, I said, about your Fox poster. I think I was unfair when I said what I said about your layout. It was your project, and I shouldn't have criticized it. I'm sorry. He looked at me. It's okay, he said. Is it? I said. Yes, he said, and went back to what he was doing. The apology had landed somewhere, I thought, but the silence continued. Not as cold, maybe. There was a fractional difference in the quality of it on Friday and Saturday, but still present. Still the managed minimum contact approach of someone who was keeping most of themselves behind a door. On Saturday evening, I went to bed at 10 o'clock. Noah was already asleep. I walked past his door and heard the particular breathing of deep sleep, and I stood in the hall for a moment, thinking about the week and feeling the specific helplessness of a parent who knows they caused a hurt and has apologized and is still watching the wound not close as quickly as they hoped. I went to bed. There was something on my pillow. A piece of paper, folded in half, with Mom written on the outside in red marker, in his particular blocky print. I stood beside the bed and looked at it for a moment. Then I sat down and opened it. He had written it on both sides of a piece of white paper in pencil, large letters, with crossings out in a few places where he had changed a word and started again. It was not a polished document. It was exactly what it was, something a child had written alone in his room on a weekday evening, starting and stopping and trying to find the right words for something that was not easy to say. It began, Mom, I am not mad at you anymore. I want to tell you why I was. When you said my poster looked cluttered, I felt bad. But that is not the real reason. The real reason is that I worked really hard on it. And I had a reason for doing it the way I did. The title is small, because I wanted the picture of the fox to be the biggest thing, because the point is the fox, not the title. I tried to tell you that, but you were doing the dishes. I know you were tired. I could tell. You get a certain face when you are tired, and also when work was bad. I didn't want to make it worse, so I didn't say anything. But then I felt sad, because I worked really hard, and I wanted you to think it was good. I am not telling you this to make you feel bad. I am telling you because I want you to know the real thing, and not just the outside thing. The outside thing is I was quiet. The real thing is I wanted you to see what I made and think it was good. I think maybe sometimes you are so tired you can't see things properly. That is okay. I get like that too. When I am really tired, I said something mean to Jake about his drawing, and then I felt bad. I forgive you. I forgave you on Thursday when you said sorry. I just needed some more time after that to put everything back in the right place inside. I love you. Noah. P.S. The poster got a gold star. Mrs. Henderson said the layout was creative, and the fox picture was the focal point, which means the most important part, which is what I wanted. I sat on the edge of my bed and read it twice. Then I put it down on my knee and sat there for a while, in the quiet of a Saturday night, with everyone asleep, and thought about my 8-year-old son lying in the next room, who had spent a week putting everything back in the right place inside, who had identified the real thing versus the outside thing with a precision that I, at 39, was still working on, who had written me a letter not to punish me, but because he wanted me to know the real thing, who had noticed I was tired and had not wanted to make it worse, and had held his hurt privately rather than add to my load. I sat there for a long time. In the morning I went to his room before breakfast. He was already awake, lying on his back, looking at the ceiling in the particular contemplative way he has when he is thinking about something. I sat on the edge of his bed. I read your letter, I said. He looked at me. Something in his face both prepared and open. The poster layout was exactly right, I said. The fox should be the focal point. That was the correct decision, and I was wrong to suggest otherwise. You knew what you were making, and you made it well. He was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Henderson said focal point, he said. I know. You wrote that in the letter. I looked up what it meant, he said. It means the thing your eye goes to first. I wanted people's eyes to go to the fox first. That's exactly right, I said. That's good design. He nodded with the satisfaction of someone whose reasoning has been confirmed. Noah, I said, I want to say something else. You wrote in the letter that you could tell I was tired, and you didn't want to make it worse, so you didn't say anything. I want you to know, when you have something important to tell me, you are allowed to tell me even if I seem tired, even if I seem distracted. You are allowed to say, Mum, I need you to look at this. I need you to really look, even on bad days. You don't have to protect me from what you need. He looked at the ceiling again for a moment. But what if it makes it worse? He said. That's my job to manage, I said. Not yours. Your job is to tell me the real thing. My job is to be available for it even when I'm tired. And I didn't do my job well last Sunday. I'm going to try to do it better. He thought about this with the thoroughness he applies to everything. Okay, he said, but I'll probably still wait sometimes, when it's not super important. I almost smiled. That's fair, I said. You're allowed to choose what to bring and when. I just don't want you to think you have to protect me. I don't think I have to, he said, with the slight precision of someone correcting a misreading. I just wanted to. That's different. 8 years old. I told you he sees what's actually happening. He brought the poster home the following Monday. Gold star in the top right corner, a note from Mrs. Henderson. Creative layout. Noah clearly has a strong sense of visual composition. The fox illustration is the clear focal point. Well done. He put it on the kitchen counter without comment when he came in from school, the way he puts things he wants me to see without making a performance of wanting me to see them. I looked at it for a long time. The fox was enormous, taking up the entire right half of the poster, rendered in orange and copper and cream in the careful coloured pencil technique he had been developing all year. The title, Red Foxes, the Most Misunderstood Animal, was in small letters at the top left, unobtrusive, exactly as he had designed. The facts were arranged around the fox in a way that drew the eye outward from the center, like rays from a sun. It was genuinely good. Not good for 8 years old? Good. Noah, I said. He looked up from his snack. This is really beautiful, I said. He looked at the poster. At me. I know, he said. Simply, without arrogance. The tone of someone confirming a fact. And went back to his snack. I kept the letter. It is in the drawer of my bedside table, which is where I keep the things I want to be able to reach in the middle of the night. The letter, a photograph of Noah at 4, meeting his first dog, a note my mother wrote me the year I turned 30. Things that return me to something true when I need returning. I read it sometimes when I have had a bad week at work, and I am carrying that specific tiredness, and I can feel my edges getting harder than I want them to be. I read it, and I remember. There is a child in the next room who sees what's actually happening. Who knows the difference between the outside thing and the real thing? Who, at 8 years old, wrote me a letter not to hurt me, but to help me understand him better. And I think, be worth that. Be worth the care he takes with you. Try to see what's actually happening, even when you're tired. Try to look at the fox. There are things that happen in parenthood that you do not anticipate and cannot prepare for. Moments when your child shows you a version of themselves that is larger than the version you had been holding in your mind. Noah's letter was one of those moments for me. I had been thinking of him, in some dim background way, as a child who needed to be guided and corrected and gently redirected. And he handed me a piece of paper that demonstrated, in 2-sided pencil handwriting, that he had already developed, without my teaching, without my knowing, a capacity for self-reflection, an emotional articulation and generosity that I was still, at 39, sometimes failing to apply to myself. He had put everything back in the right place inside. Then he had written me a letter to help me do the same. I think about that phrase often. Put everything back in the right place inside. The idea that our feelings are not chaos, that they are things with places, that the work of being human is in part the work of finding where each thing belongs and returning it there when it has been displaced. He knew how to do this at 8. I am still learning, and he is still teaching me in the patient, specific Copperhead way that is entirely his own. Subscribe to Tender Heart Stories. Tell me in the comments, has your child ever said something that made you realize they understood more than you thought? See you in the next one.